what mods could Victoria 3 have for its game? Now in this video I'm simply going to be telling you my reasons as to what mods I think could really do well in a Victoria 3 setting. Let's see how it goes and let's start. The very first example I'm going to give is Steampunk. The reason why Steampunk is going to fit so well in Victoria 3 is because you don't have entire control over your army. Though I do wish that this aspect would be improved. But why? Because Victoria 3 allows you basically to engage in a lot of related matters in running your nation. Well, you might be running a nation, you might be running a state, you might be running a republic, you might be playing the shogunate in Japan, for example, right? And to kick the shogunate out of Japan, you might have multiple civil wars. There'll be landowners and interest groups that have their own different rebellions and motives, and these really fit into a steampunk style of gameplay. And when I mean a steampunk style of gameplay, I mean it should also not radically just overhaul the, let's say, the campaign map. It should overhaul everything from the UI, from the campaign mechanics to the campaign shown, you know, individual models, little things that make the mod truly steampunk. And why not? Because Victoria 3 is going to the World War I era anyway, and there was an arms race between Germany and Britain during the last, let's say, the last quarter of the Victorian century. But we have Victoria 3 and steampunk is going to fit really well. You could have steampunk airplanes, steampunk tanks, steampunk ships or something. Now of course, I'm just going into the basic detail of what I think could be there. I really think the idea of additional resources on steampunk, for example, you could make some regions desolate, or you could make the discovery for oil, the discovery for gold rush, or something like that. All of these type of events would really fit well. And there is the fantastic CKIII mod for Hearts of Iron 4, and I definitely think something of that kind could definitely be, you know, brought here. You could have an Iron Harvest style of gameplay. Plenty of potential for a steampunk mod, and I really think that would be a really amazing thing to do. Right, so let's go to our next potential setting, and that would be the fall of the samurai, or basically the rise of the Far East. Now what do I mean by the rise of the Far East? I think this would be an excellent DLC to expand most of the factions within Asia. Basically it would be a focus on China, Korea and Japan, with maybe more exclusive focus on their mission trees, on their unique stats, etc. Whatever you want to name it. But I'm basically going to be choosing Total War as a sort of foundation, as to give an example as to how this DLC could work. Basically you could have the Potion War DLC, where the major factions are fighting the Shogun factions. Okay, you're having these type of factions and they're both fighting each other, and basically one wants to modernize and one wants to keep Japan in isolation, right? But basically the reason the Japanese want to innovate, want to reform, is that the Americans just came in and basically scared the living heck out of them. Basically they saw the Americans with these massive huge ships under Commodore Perry, and they said, no, we have to adapt, otherwise we're going to get really wrecked up, smashed up or whatever. And the Opium Wars in China basically did just that. It basically just said to the Japanese, innovate or basically be washed away by the past. That's basically what this was, and we don't want that. And I really think that the rise of the Far East could basically herald as a sort of new reform tree. Now basically as Japan, you reform to start the Meiji army, the Meiji imperial era, and you start to have ambitions over Southeast Asia basically, you know. And Japan was the leading innovator during that time. Japan also made extensive use of its diplomatic potential, because what it often did was that it often tried to restrict the Chosun court in Korea. It wouldn't allow the Koreans to basically, innovate or expand, and the Korean court was so corrupt that it basically fought against the interests of its own king. And that's the main thing. So you could have a rise in Japan, but let's not put the focus just on Japan. Let's put the focus on Korea. You could have a corrupt Korea, basically, that's struggling to increase and grow, to adapt, and its bureaucracy is holding its back. But maybe you could do something where Korea basically just starts to do the opposite of that, and Korea becomes a rival power to Japan. You could have the Qing Chinese, for example, and their dynasty, and they could do the exact opposite of what happened in the Opium Wars. So you could have some really cool ideas going on here. And as for Steampunk Mod, I think it will be really fantastic. It will really fit the theme here. I really think Steampunk is an underrated feature. Now let's look at another DLC that I think will be absolutely appropriate. I think we could call this, I think The Wars of the Bosporus would be an adequate title, because this would cover the Crimean War setting. And as a DLC it would be absolutely fantastic. As a mod setting, even more fantastic, because you have all the right factions in the right place. All you need to do is just adjust a few things here and there. And I really think that if we got something like this, where you have the Crimean War, where you have Russia against the Ottomans, against the French and the British, and you have this war in Sevastopol, and you have this war over the Crimea, I think you would basically be having a fight of the West against a fight of the, against the Tsarist Empire. And you basically could also have the Ottomans basically trying to become the famous empire that they once were, to reclaim the glory that the Ottoman Sultanate once had. You could have the British that basically are refusing to innovate, and the French that want glory. The French want to prove that even though that they don't have Napoleon Bonaparte, they have Napoleon III, and they are basically trying to claim a new glory, a new thing. And Fire and Maneuver does this really well. Fire and Maneuver really covers this type of warfare really nice. And you could also do this through an economic perspective, a gameplay perspective. You could do so many things with a Crimean War DLC. I really think that would be a fantastic setting. Initially I wasn't going to say this as a DLC, but when I said it, it really lends itself to something like that. As a mod, really fantastic. But let's see. Now, we could have the American Civil War. Now, when you have the American Civil War, of course, the American Civil War could ideally be its own conflict. Now, I know that the game covers from 1836 to all the way to, well, maybe 1900 and maybe beyond. Who knows if there's an extended timeline mod. But, well, I think we really need an American Civil War mod that really goes into in-depth, into exploring the era, into exploring the causes of the Civil War, what basically happens, resources, trade, etc. Maybe get the Confederacy, maybe get the French, maybe get the French intervention in Mexico. You got a really good dynamic for all of these warring periods, for all of these warring factions. And I really think that American Civil War mod, with proper attention, proper devotion, as a DLC, maybe as a mod, I think it will be really fantastic. So this will really cover the time period. This will be really great, and it will be interesting to see how alternate history diverges from here. Because Victoria 3 is a game about alternate history, in its way, more or less. A World War I mod would be absolutely fantastic. Now, of course, we have Hearts of Iron 4 that covers World War II, but just imagine World War I plus steampunk in one way or the other in Victoria 3. And it will really lend to it, because Victoria 3 is, how do I say it? It's very complicated for me to basically say it, but from my understanding, you are running the nation, the politics, the interest groups, the media, the everything. Economy plays a big factor, right? Resources play a big factor. And World War I was almost a war on resources. It was a war on land. It was a war on everything. It was a complete era of total warfare. It was the warfare of the people, not of kings and queens. And that was the main thing, right? And that type of warfare can be represented through many things. In fact, during World War I in England, you had the march of the suffragettes. You had political movements everywhere. You had the rise of disenfranchised peoples. You had the rise of ideologies. You had the rise of communism. You had the rise of Bolshevism. You had the rise of the Germans. You had the rise of communism. You had the rise of so many different ideologies in this World War I era. You had the fall of the monarchies. In fact, you could call this as the fall of the monarchs. as a fantastic mod setting. Now that would be really interesting to play through, you know. You had the arms race, you had so many things in the Victorian period, you know. So I think in Fall of the Monarchs, a World War I setting would be an absolutely fantastic mod to go through. And last but not least, perhaps the liberation of Greece. Maybe the Ottoman Greek independence wars? No. And last but not least, I really think Victoria 3 could go back to older time periods, maybe an ancient setting, maybe an 18th century setting, maybe a pirate setting, or maybe a I've said steampunk so many times, do forgive me. Maybe a Star Wars setting, maybe some other different types of settings that could really lend to a Victorian period. I really think we could have, you know, Howl's Moving Castle. We could have some crazy mods for Victoria 3. And I am just excited for the modding capability of what Victoria 3 is going to provide. And let's see what happens. Maybe we could have a Arcane Victoria 3 mod in League of Legends. Or something like that. No, I'm just joking. But I think Victoria 3 has the potential. Also, thank you so much guys for watching this video I made on Victoria 3. Will be incredible. I just wanted to post what mods I think could work in a Victoria 3 setting. But look, I want to know what you think. Let me know what mods you want to see in Victoria 3. You know, let's have some crazy, outlandish ideas. I want you guys to suggest your craziest ideas for mods. The mods that could never be made, DLCs that you want to see, time periods you want to see. You know, nah, maybe not. You know, let's. I want to know what you guys think. Let me know what your ideas are for Victoria 3 mod setting. So don't forget to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video.